Welcome to the Healthy Families New York Program Quality Series. This session is the first in a 6-session series that is designed to help you as HFNY providers understand and use quality measures to improve the outcomes of your program. Through this series, you will learn what kinds of data are gathered and why, and you will also learn how data can be used to improve the quality of your program's performance. I'm John Heck.
And I'm Corinne Noble. We'll be your guides through this material. Before beginning this session, you should have already completed the 3-part series on the basic forms training located on the homepage of your MIS and have been on the job for at least 6 months. This session is intended primarily for FSWs, or now known as FSS, and supervisors. On all of the previous modules and on this series, you will be able to view at your own pace, stop when you want to, and replay areas you may want to hear again. The time in which you complete each session is less important than what it is that you learn. So don't feel pressure to remember everything quickly. Feel free to replay areas where you need a better understanding.
Let's talk about what we want to accomplish in Session 1. Session 1 is a basic introduction to performance measurement. In this session, we are going to explore the various terms and vocabulary that you will need in this performance measurement journey and the types of data that are collected. The learning objectives for this session are as follows. At the end of Session 1, you as a learner will be able to state why we measure performance, define what a performance target is, and recognize terms used in performance measurement. Okay, let's begin.
As you know, Healthy Families New York is based on evidence of what works. One of our objectives as a program is to have the greatest positive impact on the lives of the children and families that we serve. We want to measure how we're doing related to meeting performance outcomes and fidelity to the HFA model. If we didn't do this, programs wouldn't know what good they were accomplishing or where the program's practices need to be adjusted.
Whenever more than one person is involved in a process, it's important that we use a common vocabulary so that we can each understand what the other is saying. The same is true for performance measurement. To have a meaningful conversation, we all need to use the same name for a given aspect of the process. We will spend some time explaining the vocabulary used throughout the performance measurement process. Here are some of the terms we will define in this session. Outcome measures, cohort, data collection elements, time periods, and performance targets.
Outcome measure, the standard against which the end result of an intervention is assessed. One of our main objectives in Healthy Families New York is to reduce parental stress. An example of an outcome measure would be to find less parental stress in highly stressed families by the time the child is 6 months old.
Another important concept that we will reference over and over again is a cohort. A cohort is a group of individuals that share common characteristics. One of our performance targets only looks for families where the target child is 1 to 1.5 years old in the reporting period. Another example of a cohort is caregivers under the age of 21 at enrollment.
The third element to define is data collection elements. Data collection elements are form items used to measure the outcome. These are typically medical records, follow-up statuses, and assessment scores, to name a few. So, the data collection elements on this example target children must have shots recorded in each of the following immunization groups on the target child medical form by the first birthday, 3 DTP shots and 2 polio shots. The data collection elements on this element would be, on this example, would be the dates of shots recorded on the TC medical form and specifically the dates of the 3 DTPs and the 2 polios on the form.
Time period. Time period refers to when and in what period a target is to be met. An example would be that target children would be up to date at immunizations at the first birthday. As you can see, our target is 90% of those. Measuring performance is part of the continuous quality improvement, also called CQI. We use the Management Information System, the MIS, to collect data from individual programs to monitor program performance, as well as obviously collecting the data, assessing whether the program is being implemented with fidelity to the model, that's the HFA model. Fidelity means whether we are faithfully carrying out the HFA model in the way it is intended and outlined by the best practice standards. The MIS also collects information to improve the quality of services provided. Reports are generated and you can analyze them to determine progress. If you're doing fine, whatever you're doing is working. But if you aren't, you need to revisit the areas where you are not doing well, make changes, and measure again. CQI activities may occur weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannually, or on an annual basis. Healthy Families New York accreditation to HFA occurs every 5 years. If your one program is not performing, it can affect the accreditation of the entire multi-site system.
For the rest of the sessions in this series, we will address the following 3 performance measurement areas: performance targets, performance indicators, and HFA's best practice standards. For the rest of this session 1 and all of sessions 2 and 3, we will address the first performance area, which is performance targets.
The Performance Target Manual will be located on the Healthy Families New York MIS page where all these webinars are located, and also with the other documents mentioned in all of the webinars.
We have 21 performance targets in Healthy Families New York. Each of these have a target for the program to achieve, a defined cohort to be measured, specific data elements used to measure goal attainment, and a time frame for achieving the target. The 21 performance targets have 3 categories that align with goals set by Healthy Families New York and Healthy Families America. These are Health and Development Targets, HD, Parent-Child Interaction Targets, PCIs, and Family Life Course Targets, FLC.
Okay, let's take a first look at some of the details of the performance targets. Over the next 3 slides, I will be describing the 3 types of performance targets that were just mentioned by Karine: HD, Health and Development, PCI, Parent-Child Interaction, and Family Life Course, FLC. For each of the outcome areas, I will describe the PT code that you see in the first column, the target content and time frame, who collects the data, and the target of the measurement. What you should get out of the next few slides is a general idea about the kinds of information and outcomes Healthy Families New York has, and where some of your efforts while on the home visits should be placed. Later, as you start to review the quarterly performance target report, you must become familiar with the PT code for each, i.e. HD1 is the first health and development target, etc. In some of the supporting QA reports associated with this report, this PT code is used throughout. You will learn more about this in the next session. So let's begin. The first two PTs have to do with the target child being up to date on immunizations. The first being at 1 year and the second at 2 years. As you can see, you and the parent will work together to collect this information, and obviously we are measuring the TC's immunization status. So those are the first two, HD1 and HD2. HD3 is asking you to measure the potential for lead where the target child lives by answering some questions about the living environment. Again, you are asking the parent these questions, and this is done on the follow-up form. Next, HD4 is about the target child and the target that the target child has a medical provider. You will notice that each of these targets and the collection of data around these targets is a joint effort between you and the visitor, between you, the visitor, and the parent you are visiting. The next two targets have to do with getting TC to a medical provider for the prescribed number of well baby visits. Again, you are working with the parent to accomplish this outcome. The next target, HD7, looks to see if you and the parent are regularly doing the developmental screens for the target child using the ASQ. And finally, the last health and development target looks to see if the PC1 has a medical provider, similar to what we did in HD4. As you can see, all but one of these health and development targets are focused on the target child. Okay, continuing with the next category of targets, parent-child interaction, or PCI targets, are next. We see again that this is a collaboration with the parent, a collaboration between you and the parent in collecting the data. Most of the targets focus on the status of the parent or the PC1. The first, PCI1, is looking to see if the TC is breastfed at least for 3 months. This measures any target child that has had at least some breast milk for 3 months. The next 5 targets have to do with data collected on the Parenting Stress Index. This press-through form is completed by the PC1 at various points in time based on the TC's age. PCI2 is unique as it measures how well you do as a program getting the first PSI completed by the parent. The first PSI is important as it establishes a baseline of parental stress of the PC1 shortly after intake if enrolling postnatally, or just after the TC's birth if the family enrolls prenatally. For these targets, we want to identify early on the parents or PC1s that have high parental stress. As a summary, PC3 and PC4 look at this initial PSI that we talked about in PCI2 and finds those parents with high total scores, and this is read as high stress, and then checks back in on a subsequent PSI when the TC is 6 months old for PCI3 to see if the stress has reduced or decreased, and again when the TC is 1 year old to see if it has decreased again for PCI4. Finally, performance targets PCI 5 and PCI 6 act just like the previous two PCI targets, except they start with high scores in one of the subdomains called parent-child dysfunctional interaction, and looks at the 6-month PSI and then the 1-year PSI. Again, we will be talking more in depth about each one of these targets when we get to the 3rd session. So let's move on to the last area of the performance targets, and that is called Family Life Course, or FLC. For the previous targets, we looked to outcomes for the target child in the PC1. For these FLC targets, we will expand our outcomes to include other caregivers in the home, like PC2 and OBP. Again, you will notice it is a collaboration between the visitor and the parent to collect the information needed to measure the outcomes. For the first two FLC targets, the general idea is that by the child's 1st and 2nd birthday, some caregiver in the home, either PC1 or PC2 or OBP, has a job or is in an educational and training program. For FLC 3 and 4, there is a similar target of becoming more self-sufficient. When the PC1 is receiving TANF benefits at enrollment, the target or outcome desired is to have the PC1 not be receiving these benefits by the child's 1st birthday for FLC 3, and looks again when the child turns 2 to see if the PC1 is no longer receiving this benefit. As a home visitor, you do not have the ability to affect the economic conditions where the parent lives, but all efforts are to help them find a way to become more self-sufficient. FLC 5 and 6 finds those PC1s that do not have a high school degree or GED at enrollment and are 21 or under 21 years old. Then when the target child is 6 months old and 1 year old, the target will look to see if the PC1 has gotten a high school diploma or GED, or if the PC1 is enrolled in a degree-bearing program. Again, the outcome desired is for PC1 to have more education to help them be more self-sufficient. There's a lot of detail that we talked about, but again, we will revisit this in a future session, and of course you can always go back and review what we talked about here.
So thank you so much for completing session 1. Don't forget to tell your supervisor to record this training in your training record, and remember, there is always help if you need some. If you have any questions, you should contact the CHSR support line at 518-591-8610 and talk to Corey, for example, or you can also click on the Submit a Ticket on the MIS. Now we go on to session 2. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.